What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for another edition of In the Paint. We break down everything college basketball has to offer. With me, as always, we have Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Raider Jim at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, doing real well. Getting ready for the holidays. Looking forward to another good weekend of college basketball. Kind of make me forget about Raider football for 48 hours.
Yeah, didn't want to bring that up, but yeah, we definitely exchanged a few texts last Thursday night. It was a tough one. I'm not gonna make anything. That's for tomorrow to break down. We do have an awesome surprise here for In the Paint with us. We have, of course, Coach Brandon Lupian. You can find Coach at Portland 76er on Twitter. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be on with you, my two esteemed colleagues, and looking forward to a different sport today.
Yeah, got the three amigos together to talk a little basketball, college basketball to be exact, as we get ready to kind of focus on the beginning of conference play and start to kind of build towards, of course, March, as we get ready to hopefully have a very, very exciting tournament, all 68 teams ready to roll. But it is time to start. As usual, as we kind of started last year, how we did the show, we'll break down the top 25. Still very early to really kind of care about the top 25. This isn't college football where you want to, be as high up all season as possible. This very interesting, though. We had Houston as the number one team for most of the year. We did see Houston finally lose this past weekend, but the new top five has Purdue at the top at 10-0, Virginia 8-0, UConn at number 3 at 11-0, Alabama, the team that did take down Houston, is at 4. They are 8-1. And of course, aforementioned Houston is 9-1 and sitting at number 5 in the country. Some other notable teams: Texas was probably in line to be the number 1 team after Houston. They ended up falling as well. They have more drama than just on the court issues, which we'll get to here in a moment. We also have Duke under John Shire. No more Coach K. Huge changing of the guard there at number 12 at 10-2. Furthest we've seen Gonzaga, at least early in the season. Down the list, they are 7-3 at number 15. Mississippi State, one of the few undefeateds that are down at the bottom kind of the rankings. They're 9-0. And of course, we have Auburn. They are number 19 in the country. They're 8-1, a team that kind of stumbled a bit down the stretch last year, but toss it over to Raider Jim. What are your thoughts? Still really early in the season, as we break down the top 25. Purdue on top of the heap.
Was that thrown to me?
Yeah, sorry, Raider Jim. Yeah, thoughts on the top 25?
Sorry about that. Okay, I'm having my Cox cable issue again, but I will try to keep up. Number 1, Purdue. They've got 11 wins. They've beaten a couple top 25 teams. They beat the Zags when the Zags were rated number 6. They beat Duke when Duke was number 8. The key to the Purdue game at 10-0 is this cat they've got in the middle, the center, Zach Edey. He's 7'4", 290 pounds, and over 10 games, he's averaging a double-double with 22 points per game, 13 rebounds per game. And after that, he's complemented by a couple guards. Fletcher Lawyer at 13 points a game, Brandon Smith at 9 points a game. However, as I always say, be it basketball or football, watch the game films and you might be able to pick up some weaknesses in the wall where you can penetrate. So whoever is going to play Purdue next, look at the game from the December 10th game against Nebraska. Nebraska took these guys to overtime, and Purdue barely escaped with a 65-62 win.
Yeah, it seems like Purdue, this is how they build programs. They get a big guy in the middle and a bunch of 4 guards essentially, and it's kind of stick the big guy in the middle and hit as many threes as possible. Hope the big guy can get those offensive rebounds and work his magic inside. Coach, what are your thoughts? Early season top 25, Purdue at the top. Then of course we have Houston number 5 after dropping their first loss of the year.
Yeah, Zach Edey, kind of a impact guy last year, but not as impact as Ivy. This guy was a lottery pick this past NBA draft. But Purdue going into Nebraska and escaping by 3 isn't anything new on Nebraska's side. That's a tough Nebraska team, and a typical Big 12 matchup. But Edey is the man. He's 7'4", out of Canada, and again, he put up solid. Let me see, solid numbers last year as the second guy they went to, behind I believe his name is Brandon Ivy, again, who was that lottery pick this past NBA draft. So wonderful player, tough team, and it's last year Purdue kind of took some teams or the nation by a little bit of surprise with some early knockoffs, and again they did it this year while like Raider Jim said, Gonzaga was on top of the heap, a lot higher than they are, and it's a good Purdue team, and it's a good conference to play basketball in.
Definitely. Obviously that Big Ten has been kind of at the top in both football and basketball for quite some time, at least top to bottom. The depth, especially in basketball, even just it's going to be really interesting to see Zach Edey, Hunter Dickinson meet up in the Purdue Michigan showdown coming up here, I'm sure at some point. But for me, Duke really jumps out to me. Obviously, I don't think there's a single team out there that's dealing with a bigger kind of shift in philosophy or, shift in everything, going from Coach K, who is the first ballot Hall of Famer, fantastic coach, to John Shire, who, let's be honest, has never been a head coach and now is kind of given the keys to a Ferrari, and his hope is asked to not only just keep it on the track, but also finish in the top 4, or whatever it is. We'll see how that goes down the stretch. I do think a good sign was, his first recruiting class at the very least got the job done. Well, that has to continue though, because at the moment, John Shire may just be, kind of recruiting with the name Duke. And that's why kids are signing there, not because of John Shire. And that's what Mike Krzyzewski was so good at doing. It's getting players and families to commit to what Coach K was doing. We'll see if John Shire can continue to build that way. It is a little interesting though, to kind of see UConn. It seems like a very long time, almost Kemba Walker days were the last time we saw a pretty good UConn team. And I could be wrong. There may have been a team or two in there that did some things since the Kemba Walker days, but it's good to see UConn up at the top, or at least getting closer to the top. They're number 3, still currently undefeated. We did talk about, of course, the number 17 Texas. They were possibly in line to be the number 1 team, but their loss dropped them down to 7. They are 7-1. The loss wasn't ideal, but their big loss has come this week with their head coach, Chris Beard, the former Texas Tech head coach who left Lubbock to go to Austin. He has been suspended without pay indefinitely. While this is all figured out, he has been arrested for domestic battery. We'll go to you, Raider Jim. You were the one who broke the news to me. So first and foremost, how does it affect Texas on the basketball court? And the follow-up would kind of be a situation of, is there any way that you believe, Chris Beard is the head coach when we are doing this show in one more calendar year?
Well, I think be it in sports or in government, we've all seen stranger things happen. But if the University of Texas has any character, and if the boosters and the alum can get behind it, then I would say he should be out. You don't put your hands on a woman. You don't you don't choke out your fiance and then immediately go into the defense. Somebody that supposedly was there says, I've got film that says he's innocent. And they said, well, are you going to show us the film? And he said, absolutely not. So this is just going to be one of those messes. Do you really want to subject the team to the road games and the harassment they will take from start to finish somebody else's house. That's not fair to those kids. Let them concentrate on the game. It's going to be a sideshow. It's going to be the show. Anytime out, it's going to be, that's going to be the headline. That's going to be the headline. That's going to be the headline. So I would say best thing for Texas, they did drop in the rankings. You know, they're holding at number 7, but that is because they haven't played since the 6th of December, and that was that loss to Illinois. So that, to me, that speaks for that. And real quickly on the UConn team, my question about UConn is they have only played, if I'm not mistaken, one top 25 team. That was Alabama, and lost. I'm not saying they're not an 11 team, and if they're not worthy of the ranking, all somebody has to do is beat them. I always say that too, but it'll be curious to see how they really fare over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Texas, obviously, I'm not going to speak for anyone at the university, especially not because I don't really know, but I would have to imagine there is some lawyerish stuff going on, just the university kind of covering their own backside, just to make sure that, you know, if they do kind of, you know, pull the trigger on Chris Beard, that they make sure they have all the facts, because, you know, who knows, we're not judge and jury here. I don't think we know any more than anyone else. We could, in a month's time, this could be something
Correct.
where there wasn't anything there. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there is the possibility. And I do believe the suspension without pay is kind of a way for the university to just say, let's make sure all the facts are out there. The law does what the law needs to do. But I feel like the minute this either is a settlement or it goes to court and anything guilty, any of the charges are guilty, that's when Texas pulls the plug. We do see Rodney Terry is the acting head coach right now. Coach, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you are a coach. Obviously never gotten any trouble like anything like this, but overall, what are your thoughts? How does this affect the team? And of course, Chris Beard going forward.
You know, it's a tough situation. I'm glad Raider Jim mentioned the distractions that it may be toward the team. You know, when you're in that locker room and you've had some time, maybe not so more recently with college sports, but you've had some times with, let's say, a 4-year senior or a 4-year junior that redshirted, and you've become that father figure in that locker room. You know, feelings are going to be kind of like hurt, or feelings are going to be kind of questioned, and everyone's going to want to know, you know, what's really going on. This is Chris Beard's, what, 1st year or 2nd year at Texas? So he hasn't had a lot of time to really get to know like those guys. But, you know, when you're in those off-season trainings and you're recruiting kids and you're meeting their families, and families are putting trust in you as a head coach and your staff, you know, there's a lot of questions in the air. From what I know or from what I heard and read, you know, this has been an ongoing saga for him and this woman. There's been accounts as to when he was at Texas Tech, not to this extreme, but there's been accounts where, yeah, there's been some issues. You know, he's come in with some issues because of his relationships, and you know, it's kind of up in the air like now. But I'm going off topic now and saying, what if this was a football program? What would Texas have done? You know, and you know, for him to be on unpaid leave, that's kind of a big statement nowadays, because that, you don't see that. You see a lot of paid leaves and whatnot. So it's an interesting and a sad story. And I only wish the best for those Texas student athletes and the department, and Chris Beard and his fiance, because, you know, it's an ugly situation that's in mainstream media. It's an ugly situation that's going to be battled out within the law, and you never want to wish that on your worst enemies, because that's a long road ahead. But in regards to UConn, man, UConn is looking good and dynamic, and Danny Hurley has got that program on another level. And I've always liked him more than Bobby over my times, because what he did at Rhode Island in his first head coaching stint was amazing. And what he's doing now at UConn, it's been satisfying to see UConn back in the headlines. But what a big East it's coming out to be. UConn 11-0, St. John's of all teams 10-0. Villanova going through transition with Kyle Neptune and Coach Jay Wright leaving abruptly in the offseason, getting their sea legs going, waiting on the return of Justin Moore. They're starting to get going, and then watching a team like Marquette play the other night.
Just demolish.
Those guys could score.
Yeah.
Those guys are dynamic and athletic, and Shaka Smart has that team playing well. Where did Shaka Smart just come from? He came from Texas because they had enough of his winning ways. I guess it wasn't enough. So it's a fun college basketball season so far. And I'm just sad that I've missed a couple of shows with y'all today.
Yeah. For Texas, back to Chris Beard for my thoughts. It's really unfortunate because I think he is such kind of a controversial figure now, and this was before the this arrest obviously has become a very controversial figure. But I was very, very surprised that he just up and leave Texas Tech, and not only just up and leave Texas Tech, but go to Texas. I'm not going to sit here and preach loyalty or, things like that. Because I'll be honest, if someone comes up to me and offers me more money to do the same job, I'd probably go over there. But I do think coaching's a little different. You now have a community that's behind you, and you just kind of spurn them for really the sibling rivalry that we see. Obviously, Texas Tech always feels slighted when it comes to Texas. I don't think we'll ever see Chris Beard on this sideline for Texas, and maybe not for any college basketball team going forward. Now, obviously, the Art Briles situation is much different, but we still see the kind of backlash there. I forget who it was. Was it Alabama
Baylor.
or someone came
Baylor.
out and said, what was that?
It was at Baylor.
Okay,
right?
But like 3 or 4 months ago, someone came out, a program came out and said they were going to bring Art Briles on, and within 48 hours had to walk that back and say never mind, because it was such a vitriol reaction, which is, believe me, dive into the story and it's all meant to be there. But I could possibly see some similarities here in the Chris Beard situation. Great basketball coach, but definitely has some demons off of the court there as well. But across the country, we do have, of course, the defending runners-up last year. We had a very, very blue-blooded national championship last year with Kansas and North Carolina. Kansas having a good year as usual, brought some pieces back. But North Carolina, who I think most people thought was probably going to be the team to beat this year, bringing back their big three of Baycott, Love, and RJ Davis. They've been struggling. They went through a 4-game losing streak. Granted, all 4 of those teams are very good teams. However, a 4-game losing streak for North Carolina, currently unranked. That will get some eyebrows raised out there in Chapel Hill. Hubert Davis took over this team. Great story last year. This year, we'll see how it goes. But my question to you, Raider Jim, is it time to panic in Chapel Hill, or is it too early and it's time to just kind of stay the course and get through a tough ACC?
Yeah, panic might be too strong of a word, but boy, would I be concerned. Those 4 games, if I'm not mistaken, that I picked up last week was they are the first team to start hang on, my alarm's over here. Let me get them out.
Mm-hmm. We could pass it over to you, Coach, while Raider Jim takes care of that real quick. Oh, no, never mind. Cancel that. Right back to Raider Jim. Go for it.
So they were the first team to start the preseason rankings as number 1, go in the first couple of weeks ranked number 1, and the first team to in that ranking, in that position, only team, if I'm not mistaken, that ever had a 4-loss run and knocked themselves out of the top 25. The 4 they lost, now their 4th game they lost, they were without their big man on the floor, but he was on the floor the other 3 games. So you really can't attribute injury to the 4 losses. I got some work to do. It's going to be interesting to see how they finish out right now and go into the new year when conference play really picks up. I don't think they're the favorite anymore.
Yeah, it's an early season test, and I think a lot of coaches would like to see some adversity early on in the season. I think this is a little too much. I don't think Hubert Davis wanted a 4-game losing streak, but that's what it was. And at least at the very least, it was early enough probably for them to hopefully right the ship. But as you said, probably not the favorite in a lot of people's eyes. Coach, what are your thoughts for the situation developing out in Chapel Hill?
Yeah, there's no room to panic for these guys, whether it's those 4 losses that has the media buzzing around. North Carolina and the ACC has the reputation in itself that you win in that division or you win in that league. I think tournament berths are a lot easier for North Carolina than, say, a San Diego State, just based on their reputation and based on the strength of schedule of that conference. Not to say that the Mountain West is a weak conference this year, because it's certainly not, but no room to panic. Now, the issue with North Carolina is I think they're not getting enough touches inside than letting the guards just roam and be free and do their thing. I think they got to establish the inside game before they start chucking up threes. Give Baycott some touches, and then let's see what the young kids on the blocks could do, because I just don't think Hubert Davis trusts some of those young bigs yet, and they really lack the depth inside with their big men. They just happen to be a little bit too young, other than Baycott. And when Baycott gets in trouble, goodness, Caleb Love isn't hitting the shots like he was down the stretch in the tournament. And that run that they made in the tournament is when you want to be hot. They're just not hot right now, which early on in early December, that's absolutely fine for a team like North Carolina. They're not going to position themselves out of bracketology talk this early.
Yeah, it would take a really rough ACC run to keep this team away from an at-large bid. Just the name power in itself. I agree. I think it is too early to panic in Chapel Hill. Also because Carolina was somewhat in the same position last year. Obviously weren't number 1 and didn't have all this attention. But there were some times early on where there were some people asking questions about Hubert Davis. He obviously was able to right that ship and guide them to a runner-up position last year. No panic in Chapel Hill. That has been established here. However, there's got to be a lot of panic in Louisville. I talked about Louisville a few weeks ago. I questioned whether or not this team would win a basketball game this year. Still looking like no. They are 0-9. They play 8-1 Western Kentucky this week. And then I believe this weekend they play Florida Atlantic. I think that's probably Louisville's only chance to win a basketball game. They may go 0 and fill in the blank. Because if you can't beat the likes of Florida, A&M and Bellarmine and some of the other teams, I don't expect you're going to get one in the ACC. So we'll keep our eye on Louisville. They're definitely panicking down there. It's been a tough time for the Cardinals situation this season, but we do have time to now step into the Gonzaga report with Raider Jim. Lots going on. It was getting ready for the West Coast Conference season to begin. But Raider Jim, what have you got? Gonzaga report. The floor is yours.
Well, I'll tell you, it's what I said last week or the last time we convened together. And that is, I think, best things that may have happened for Gonzaga. You always want to be the top of the heap, man. You want on, but at the same time, a couple losses, and all your losses were to ranked teams, even though you may have been ranked higher at the time, brings it back to reality. Mark Few knows how to get these guys to focus. They're definitely in shape, and they came back, put together a couple good wins, have moved back up from 8-15. I think they're going to be fine. The telltale game is going to be this Saturday. I think it's the first game of a 3-game stretch. It's going to be 3 great games back to back to back, but it's going to start with Gonzaga going to Alabama to take on the Crimson Tide. That's going to tell it all. That game is going to be featuring Shackelford, the great shooter over there for Alabama. And the question is, who is Gonzaga put on him? Now, you would think they'd put Andrew Neville. That may not, as a rule, they would not. But at 6'5", he should be able to keep up with him. And they will probably take Rasheed Bolton and put in the other guard for Alabama. His name's escaping me. I'm trying to get through my notes here to find it. Javon Quinterly, great kid, fast kid. Rasheed Bolton might be built a little bit better to keep up with him on the floor. Drew Timmy's going to be Drew Timmy. He's going to get 18 to 24 points on Saturday. This is going to be not a make or break game for Gonzaga, but it's going to be a statement game for Gonzaga, as in, hey, yeah, we get it. We lost to some ranked teams, but you know what? We're still the Zags. We're still good. And let's hope they can come out severe, and Few has them focused. Good, because it's a whole week away from Christmas, so there's not going to be too much hustle and bustle for the, getting off the university campus, hurrying back. They don't have to hurry for anything. They just have to show up and play ball. Now, with respect to the West Coast in general, man, this is a different game this year. Gonzaga sitting at 8-3, San Francisco sitting at 8-3, St. Mary's is at by virtue of that victory over the San Diego State Aztecs. And at the top of the heap is Santa Clara, because they played one more game than everybody. Even Loyola Marymount's sitting at 8-4 right now. So, wow, as I said a couple weeks back, this isn't going to be the West Coast Conference that everybody's used to. And it's going to be interesting to see if Vega has their way and just runs it like they usually do, only having to worry about Randy Bennett and the St. Mary's. Going to be a good season. I think the Gonzaga Bulldogs are sitting in a fine position. Again, best of luck to them this coming Saturday. I know where I'm in my morning coffee, and can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very good run up to the West Coast Conference, and good for not only the West Coast Conference, but good for Gonzaga to get some of these teams that they'll be ready every year. Those San Francisco's and St. Mary's and those teams, their national championship to a lot of those players will be the game against Gonzaga. And I think for them to be very, very competitive, that is the key, not only for that individual team, but also for the West Coast Conference as a whole, as there are, of course, continuing to be those whispers of Gonzaga maybe needing to find some bigger, greener pastures, but that will be for another day. It is now time to hop into the Aztec report. I'll give my thoughts, and then Coach will be coming in behind me, big San Diego State fan as well. So we'll be kind of tag teaming the Aztec report. But for the Aztecs, currently 8-3, as they get ready to head into conference play, they'll have a showdown with UCSD, and then we'll dive in against Air Force and UNLV as they get ready for the conference season. The game against Air Force will be next Wednesday, a week from today as we record, and UNLV will be on the 31st. That'll be a Saturday, New Year's Eve. They'll be facing UNLV in a very, very big matchup. UNLV is ranked currently. Now, San Diego State, look, 8-3. This was a team that was nationally ranked to start the year. There were a lot of people who thought this team was going to go really far, very high on this team. And I'm not saying that they aren't correct, but there are some worrying signs here. We continue to see the San Diego State Aztecs below par offensively, and I'm being really nice when I say below par. The offensive side of the ball for the Aztecs has year in and year out really been the downfall of this team, and stopped them from having big time success, especially in tournaments. Last year, Matt Bradley, I mean, I don't know how the dude did it. He was carrying this entire team, And maybe not surprisingly, he's paying somewhat the price for it this year. His numbers are down. Now, he is getting a little more help. He's not, night in and night out, the only guy in double figures, but he's only averaging 11 points per game. His field goal percentage is below 40% for the first time in his career. And his 3-point shooting is at 26%. That, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I could do better or this or that. And I understand last year was a lot for him. He had to do a lot, and he's been hoping others would step up, and maybe they have, but at the same time, Matt Bradley hasn't been at that same level. And if that's not the case, the Aztecs will not make the tournament, period. I don't care what anybody says. This is too good of a Mount West for the Aztecs to just average 50 points a game and get in that large bid. It's just not going to happen. So there going to be needs. There has to be some kind of inside insight and maybe guys digging deep, because it's just not good enough right now. Great, you're really good defensively. Enjoy your ceiling of being a tournament team, because you need to bring more to the table. As I brought up, the Mountain West very good this year. Currently, 3 undefeated teams at the top. You have Utah State, UNLV, and New Mexico. However, none of these teams really have a big win. New Mexico has a few good wins over St. Mary's and San Francisco in the West Coast Conference. But just to show you kind of where the media and the country thinks of the 3 teams in the Mountain West that are undefeated, according to the rankings, San Diego State actually got the most points or most votes out of anybody. So that just kind of shows you an 8-3 San Diego State team that has played a much difficult schedule, or much more difficult schedule than the other 3, is getting more love. But once again, really early in the year. But the Mountain West does look much improved from last year. Coach, I'll pass it over to you to fill in any of the blanks that I missed or anything like that. Your thoughts on San Diego State Aztecs and the Mountain West?
Yeah, I think they're right where they need to be right now, regardless of the 3-game slide. I mean, look at the 3 losses that they have. I mean, St. Mary's is someone that should be in the tournament this year, and always gives Gonzaga a run for their money in the West Coast Conference. Technically, you could chalk that Arkansas win or loss as a neutral site nullified game, even though they have the loss on their record. If and they don't grade these games with the eyeball test or common sense anyways, but if you watch that game and you see how San Diego State controlled that game from the tip, made runs, gave up runs, made runs again, and then just blew it at the end in an early season game, that's gonna go, that goes a long way. And then I can't say enough about what Arizona did to them. That was just a whole nother animal, and they looked very unprepared. But those 3 losses, I mean, geez, it's not a loss against Kennesaw State, who they just beat. It's not a loss against a Big West team whom they played, like Fullerton, earlier in the year. They're where they need to be going into finals week. The hard part is, especially when you play these early season tournaments, is you don't get a lot of practice time to work on what's going wrong with your team. They left Maui, and that stout defense, reputation wise, wasn't stout statistic wise. They were at the bottom of the nation and overall defensive rankings. And it looked a whole lot easier for those opponents to just light up San Diego State with 3s. But, that's a whole lot easier putting up shots in a high school gym than in a college arena. The depth perception in those high school gyms or smaller gyms, it really plays its part. And unfortunately, it didn't play its part for San Diego State that weekend, or that week. But I mean, it is what it is. That's a tough non-conference schedule. And then, we're battling some illnesses, we're battling some injuries. It's finals week, so they'll have plenty of time to kind of rest that up and get back in the gym and work on that form shooting, where that's kind of been our downfall as of late. and then get prepared for Division One UCSD that has a win against a Pac-12 team in Cal. So, we're where we need to be going into conference. Just got to get a little healthy and got to work on that jump shot a little bit. What's really hurting them is I think they're relying on their athleticism too much versus doing the little things like boxing out, getting a hand in the passing lane, communicating on switches, stuff like that. I see a lot of hands below the waist instead of up in the air when they need to be contesting shots and they're just a tad second slow. But I didn't get to see the St. Mary's matchup, but I did see Arizona and Arkansas. We have a hard time offensively against teams with length.
Yeah.
We're a team with length, and teams with length hate playing against other teams with length. And San Diego State, including the last couple of years, has a hard time playing teams with length. And I'm not sure what Boise State looks like this year, but last year it was evident Bradley couldn't go off because a bigger guy, a longer arms, longer wingspan is guarding him. Had a hard time creating shots and points for himself. So I think we're going to be fine going into the Mountain West. And, it's a tough Mountain West. It's a tough San Diego State team. And I think they just got to get honed in on refining those little things. Stop relying on the athletic ability to grab the ball off the glass on a rebound. We're not a very good rebounding team. Well, why? We're not a very good boxing out team. We're not. And that's where we've been hurt. And that's where we've let other teams take advantage of that. So hopefully with this downtime of playing games, because they played games like crazy up until now, Dutch and the staff has some fine tuning to do, and hopefully they'll get it done.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as we head down the stretch, but plenty to play for as we get ready. Yeah, don't want to sleep on UCSD. That's a team that at the D2 level, I don't have to tell a whole lot of those D2 schools about it. UCSD was a bit of a power, and obviously very smart kids at the very least, very, very smart individuals that are going to be out there playing against the, not that the Aztecs aren't, but I have a feeling a lot of those UCSD kids are probably a little more worried about their degree rather than the league. But just, spitball in there. So time to look at our
coach brought up Boise. Coach questioned Boise State. They're currently at 9.
What was that?
Riding an 8-game winning streak. They have beat Clemson State, Loyola Chicago, Colorado, Texas A&M, and St. Louis most recently. Louis and New Orleans. So they're back and they're ready to play.
They're certainly back and they're ready to play. And they've got a Chris Beard transfer from Texas Tech, a St. Augustine Saint alum that I'm looking forward to watch and do well, just not against San Diego State.
Yeah. Take the week off or take the day off, big dog. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting in that Mountain West. Who knows? Maybe multiple teams coming out of there, San Diego State hopefully being one of them. But time to check out our player profile of the week. A few weeks ago, we looked at Oscar Shishebwe of Kentucky. Today, we're looking at Marcus Sasser, a guard, senior guard from the University of Houston. Of course, we talked about the Houston Cougars earlier in the episode, and even in the last episode as well, when they were ranked number 1. Marcus Sasser, pretty much 4-year starter. This is a guy who struggled a bit with injuries last year and trying to stay on the field, or on the court, I should say. But his first 2 years in Houston, he was on the floor and he was a presence. This year, once again, doing what he needs to do, 16 points a game. The three-point shooting has dropped a bit. A very, very impressive 44% last year. Made him caught a lot of attention last year, shooting like that. Back down to earth, shooting 31% from behind the arc. But he's on a team that doesn't need him to be the main focus point, I think, for Marcus Sasser. Distribute the basketball and protect the basketball. The one negative, I would say, turns the ball over a little more than I'd like to see a point guard, a senior point guard at least. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on our player profile of the week, Marcus Sasser?
Yeah, kid is fast. He's quick. 6'2", 195. He's give a mild comparison to a kid that played over with Gonzaga, Jeremy Pargo. But I think Pargo was a little more muscular and a little more dominant position, but he was good. Sasser played his high school ball for his uncle at Red Oak High in Red Oak, Texas. He was Class 5A All-State player of the year. And you're right, his first 3 seasons, he was like a lights out kid. And then last year, and this is what concerns me, last year he had to cut his season short because he had a toe injury. And you know, I always make comments about it when we do our NFL report. But he gets, you know, a dinged ankle, a dinged toe or whatever, and some coach or somebody says, oh, it's just a toe. It's just a foot. It's not big of a thing. But the kid was shooting 80% before he had his injury last year, and now he's down to what, 42%? So it'll be interesting how he finishes out. He does, yeah, he's complimented very well by his teammate Tremont Mark, who also is hitting like 9.3 points a game, right? But Sasser's a good kid. He's good and fast. Probably needs to really come on strong, though, if he wants a chance at the NBA draft and get a serious look.
Yeah, I just personally, I think you need to bring a little more to the table, or at least NBA scouts are going to want to see a little more at the table at his size and weight, to be, you know, beyond just a 3-point shooter. And if that is the case, he's got to improve mightily. This season, as I talked about, 30%, 31% is not going to get NBA scouts salivating, but he is on a team that I think, as you said, they're able to pick him up, and I think he's, you know, a really good asset for the Houston Cougars. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts on our player profile of the week, senior guard Marcus Sasser out of Houston?
You know, I really can't look to expand much on your guys' reports, but when I saw the last name, I was like, I know that last name somewhere. And as I looked it up, you know, he's related to Jason Sasser. Jason Sasser was a big time player for Texas Tech. Matter of fact, he was a 1996 SEC Conference Player of the Year. So Marcus Sasser has some big time pedigree in his genes, and you know, Calvin Sampson and his staff are benefiting from this kid's play and DNA, and what a player he is in the nation.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, the bloodlines will always help, and he stayed local, or at least state local, and going to Houston. Be interesting to see if Chris Beard, while he was at Texas Tech, gave the younger Sasser a call, see if he could bring the legacy there. But he ended on Houston, and I think for both parties, that's what they're happy about. Finally, here, as we get ready to end this edition of In the Paint, it is time to look ahead to some big games of the weekend. Look, college football, it's now bowl season. Saturdays are not solely for football. You're going to see a lot of really, really good basketball games starting on Saturdays. And this is probably the first real big Saturday of the weekend. All of these games are on Saturday, I should say. We'll have number 14 Indiana at number 8 Kansas. And then we have Gonzaga heads to face Alabama. Gonzaga is, of course, number 15, Alabama number 4. This is considered a neutral site game, but the game is in Birmingham, Alabama. Let's be honest, there's going to be a lot of red in the stands there. At MSG, we're going to have a battle of blue bloods with UCLA number 16 and number 13 Kentucky. And of course, the top 10 battle, the only one of the weekend, the Tennessee Volunteers, as they head to Arizona, who will not face, or actually they will face sanctions. We of course did see Sean Miller somehow, some way. He is the only one who does not get in trouble. All of his assistants get sanctions. The university gets sanctions, but Sean Miller, he just didn't know what was going on. But anyway, Raider Jim, what are your thoughts for big games this weekend and many others? Obviously, you're going to have your eye on that game in Birmingham, Alabama, but others as well that catch your eye.
Tell you, the one that catches my eye is not this weekend, but it's going to be on Tuesday night. It's going to be on the 20th of December. You're going to see University of Virginia taking on Miami. Now, Miami just cracked the top 25. And if look at the standings for that conference, really on top because they're 10-1. So that is going to be one heck of a game. These have 4 players that are shooting in double figures right now. 3 of those are shooting over 40% from the three-point line. That's Reese Beekman, Armin Franklin, Kihei Clark. That could be a real good game on Tuesday night. So I'm looking forward to settling in to watch that one.
Good call there. Yeah, it's definitely don't want to sleep on those weekly games as well. Coach Lupian, what are your thoughts? Some big games this weekend and into next week. Which one catches your eye the most?
I really do like that Indiana KU game. I like the big from Indiana. There were questions whether he was going to come out early last year into the draft, and he decided to stay. And that guy is pretty dynamic. Reminds me of Brad Doherty, not just with his looks, but with the style of play that he brings to the court. I watched Alabama play last night against a very tough Memphis team. Look for them to crack the top 25 in a week or two. And that Gonzaga game in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, Bama is missing one of their key players I think he's a big man, last name Brazil. So Gonzaga has an opportunity to go down there and take advantage of them missing one of their key players down low. And then I haven't got a chance to see UCLA this weekend, so I'd be really interested to see how they play against, a well-coached University of Kentucky team. And it's a neutral site game, so you're going to get a good understanding of both, especially without one or the other having a home court advantage. And then, let's see if this Arizona team's for real facing a tough Tennessee team.
Yeah, I agree. The UCLA one there, I'm right there with you, Coach. I haven't really seen anything from them this year, so this would probably be a great time to dive in and see what they're up to. And likewise with Kentucky, I haven't caught a whole lot of them, so it'd be a perfect time to definitely get some notes in there and bring them back to you next week. But that is all the time we have for you this week on this edition of the In the Paint podcast. It's nice. We got the 3 amigos all together. We'll be doing it all again tomorrow for NFL, but for this podcast, we'll send it over. Raider Jim, final thoughts as we get ready to dive in really into the conference schedule, the conference scheduling part of the season.
Well, it's the sands of time stop. And when we started football, all of a sudden here we are, the closing weeks of that. When we started talking college basketball, we couldn't wait to get to the holiday tournament, Thanksgiving week tournaments, things like that. And here we are 1 week away from eggnog and cookies and Santa coming down the chimney. And that means one thing, all this preseason stuff is done. Replacing conference basketball. I'm looking forward to it.
Agreed. It's about to get real, as they say. A lot of the games now, it's not that they didn't matter, but at the same time, I don't think Houston is going to miss out on the tournament because they lost to Alabama. And that's what I mean in terms of, do these games truly matter? Of course they do, but no one's getting eliminated or no one's getting outed this early in the season, unless you're Louisville. Yes, sorry, I had to throw one more in there. But Coach, what are your final thoughts for this edition of In the Paint?
I really don't like talking Boise State basketball, but because I brought it up, and I brought it up because there's a Saints spin on it. I didn't get a chance to mention his name earlier. His name is Chibuzo Agbo. I remember seeing him play Mission Bay High School in one of their heavy rivalry league games a couple of years back. Let's just look at what it is. He seems to be one of their top guys. He put in 24 against South Dakota State, Loyola Chicago. He put in 20 against Utah Valley. So, he's someone that has been an integral transfer for this team. And like Raider Jim read off, they've won 8 in a row. And they're going to play a tough Oakland Detroit team, and then a strong WCC Santa Clara team that could always put up numbers before getting into conference play against Nevada. So, final thoughts. This was fun, guys. I love talking college basketball more than NBA basketball. Not much of a fan, but there's some really, really undervalued teams out there right now, and look for a number of them to start making runs, like Memphis, like Villanova, like San Diego State getting back on the board. And then I look at some of these teams that are undefeated right now. Look to see, where they starting to either flatten out or continue that strong run.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great time of year. Obviously, the holidays are upon us. Be safe, be smart, be all of the things you need to be. But with that rolling around, it's kind of you're gonna have bowl games going on. A lot of people are getting into that part of the year where you have that kind of week between Christmas and New Year's where do you really need to work? Do you need to really show up? You don't really know what day of the week it is. That's a great time of year, but at the same time, it also signifies that we are just getting closer to that wonderful time of year, of course, March Madness, and we will be with you all the way until that point. So once again, thank you all so much for listening to this edition of In the Paint, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating, everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.